Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the strangely charming tale of a knight who could face swords, arrows, and the roar of battle, but trembled at the sight of a fluffy rabbit. Sounds ridiculous, right? Yet in a world where dragons were carved on shields and lions roared in family crests, this poor man had his destiny tangled with a creature best known for chewing lettuce. You might laugh, but honestly, if you were in his shoes, you might not survive the first day in medieval Europe. There were rabbits everywhere. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're at it, drop a comment below telling me your city and what time it is right now. I love seeing who's out there keeping me company in the quiet hours. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in a dimly lit hall of an old castle. The banners overhead smell faintly of smoke and damp wool. Torches flicker along the stone walls, and a hush of anticipation fills the air. At the center, seated stiffly in his armor, is the knight of our story. His name is recorded only in fragments, though most chronicles call him Sir Rolandus, a man trained in the code of chivalry, knighted after proving himself in tournaments, lauded for his courage on the battlefield. The kind of figure you expect to swing a sword with ease, hold the line when arrows rain down, and maybe even deliver a rousing speech before charging. But the irony? His bravado crumbled in the face of long ears and twitching noses. Rabbits, those gentle creatures that most medieval farmers saw as both dinner and nuisance, were, to him, living nightmares. No, let's not dismiss this too quickly. In the Middle Ages, animals often carried symbolic weight. Lions meant courage, eagles meant divine favor, and rabbits, well, rabbits were complicated. They symbolized fertility, cowardice, and sometimes, oddly enough, trickery. Scholars still debate whether this knight's fear was purely personal or if it echoed a wider anxiety of the age. Because when you lived in a world shaped by allegory and superstition, a rabbit wasn't just a rabbit, it might be a messenger of fate or even a warning from heaven. Imagine the scene. You're walking across the castle courtyard, mud squelching under your boots, when suddenly, out of the herb garden, bounds a plump brown rabbit. Your companions barely notice. But Sir Rolandus freezes, his face paling, hand clattering against his sword hilt, as if the fluffy intruder were a fire-breathing monster. It wasn't something he could laugh off. Word spread fast, because gossip in a castle was faster than a falcon's dive. And soon people were whispering, chuckling, and sometimes outright giggling whenever a rabbit darted across the fields. The chroniclers mention him not because he was the most heroic knight, but precisely because of this paradox, the clash between battlefield bravery and pastoral panic. That contrast stuck in people's memory like an ink blot on parchment. And here you are centuries later, smiling gently as you drift into the story of a man whose greatest foe was covered in fur and weighed less than a loaf of bread. You're wandering back in time now, slipping into the misty fields of his childhood. Before the sword, before the shield, before the polished armor, he was just a small boy running around his family's estate. The manor house was surrounded by orchards and patches of wild grass. And in those patches lived creatures he would never forget. Rabbits. Most children laughed when they chased rabbits, tossing pebbles or trying to catch them with bare hands. But you, standing there in his little leather shoes, feel a different shiver. The first rabbit encounter was not charming at all. One old story says a rabbit suddenly leapt from a hedge and bolted straight at him. He fell backwards, splashing into a puddle, terrified by the rush of fur and the unexpected weight of the moment. It was not dangerous. Of course, just muddy trousers and a bruised ego, but in a child's mind, The experience left a scar. Parents back then weren't exactly gentle therapists. They laughed, perhaps scolded him for cowardice, and sent him back to play. But that mix of shame and fear settled deep, like ink bleeding through parchment. Here's the funny twist. Rabbits in medieval households were both pets and food. Records from the 13th century show some families raising tame rabbits in hutches while also serving rabbit stew at feasts. Imagine the contradiction. You pet it one moment, then it's on your dinner table the next. Historians still debate whether this dual role shaped the way children of the era viewed rabbits, companions, prey, or something unsettling in between. So while other boys dreamed of justs and dragon slaying, this boy grew up glancing nervously at every twitch in the grass. A shadow moved. His heart jumped. Ears perked up over the hedgerow. He froze. Childhood fears often fade, but his fear matured right alongside him, like an unwelcome squire who never left his side. The years roll forward, and now you're standing in the dusty training yard of a castle. Young squires line up, wooden swords clashing, sweat dripping onto the packed earth. You're handed a shield almost as big as your torso, and a practice blade that feels heavier than it should. This is where boys were molded into knights. Endless drills, bruises, and the constant barking of a master-at-arms. You swing, stumble, swing again. It's harsh, but you're learning to face fear. Or at least, most fears. Our knight excelled in this world. He learned to control a warhorse, balance a lance, and take hits without flinching. His courage on the training field earned him praise. Yet even in this world of discipline, rabbits found a way to creep in. A rabbit darting across the practice ground one afternoon caused him to lose his footing, dropping his sword to a round of laughter. Not a dangerous failure, but enough to remind him that the smallest creature could unmake his composure. Medieval training emphasized courage above all. Knights were taught to suppress fear, to treat hesitation as dishonor. That's why this detail is so striking. He could master fear of pain, fear of defeat, even fear of death, but fear of rabbits remained stubbornly intact. Scholars still argue whether this was an actual phobia, what modern psychology might call leporophobia, or simply a reputation exaggerated by stories that spread faster than wildfire. Picture the scene. After hours of sparring, you wipe sweat from your brow, glance at the fields beyond the palisade, and their long ears twitch in the tall grass. Your stomach knots. Your fellow squires grin, nudging each other, waiting for your reaction. You try to act calm, but your grip tightens on the wooden sword. And though no one speaks it aloud, everyone remembers that moment. The scene shifts, and now you are no longer in the training yard, but on the open battlefield. The smell of iron and sweat hangs in the air. Horses snort, armor clatters, and banners whip in the wind. You grip your sword with steady hands, heart pounding not from fear, but from the thrill of combat. This is what every knight trained for, the moment to prove valor. Our knight, too, rode bravely into skirmishes, cutting through enemy lines with the skill of a seasoned warrior. His reputation as a fighter grew quickly. He was the man you wanted on your side. And yet, history preserves an awkward incident. One chronicle mentions a clash near a forest edge, where troops were regrouping after a charge. Just as silence fell, a wild rabbit darted from the underbrush, zigzagging through the lines. It startled the horses, but most men simply laughed. Not Sir Rolandus. He stiffened, nearly dropping his weapon, his sudden tension so visible that fellow soldiers took note. In the midst of blood and chaos, the smallest creature nearly unseated him. It's easy to underestimate how disruptive that could be. Medieval battles relied on unity of formation, and one knight faltering could ripple down the line. Historians still debate whether this story is literal truth or a metaphor penned by a scribe who liked a good moral lesson. Was the rabbit real or symbolic? No one agrees, but the details spread because it was memorable. In an age where chroniclers craved colorful anecdotes, this one was too good to leave out. Picture yourself there. The clash of swords fades. The ground still trembles from the cavalry's charge. And suddenly, out of all possible terrors, a rabbit dashes past your boots. For everyone else, it's a moment of comic relief. For our knight, it's a reminder that his fiercest adversary wore fur and twitched its nose. After the clamor of battle, life returns to the knight's estate. Picture stone walls wrapped in ivy, wooden barns filled with hay, and peasants trudging through muddy fields. You wander through his lands, hearing complaints from farmers. The rabbits are eating the crops again. For most lords, rabbits were a minor nuisance, sometimes even a welcome source of meat. But for Sir Rolandus, it was an unspeakable problem. Imagine having to govern your land while avoiding eye contact with your enemy, which happened to be small, furry, and multiplying rapidly. The truth is, medieval estates often battled rabbits as agricultural pests. Records from manorial rolls show fines levied on peasants who let rabbit populations run wild. Some castles even built elaborate rabbit warrens to control and profit from them. But here, the irony deepened. Our knight, brave in war, dreaded patrolling his own gardens. He'd delegate the task, sending squires or serfs to chase them off, inventing excuses about other duties whenever the subject came up. There's a curious account of him hosting a feast while farmers begged for help with the rabbit problem. He listened, nodded gravely, then quickly changed the subject to falconry. A clever dodge, though everyone knew the truth. Scholars still debate how seriously his fear affected estate management. Was he truly neglectful, or did his stewards handle it quietly while he avoided humiliation? Sources are divided. You picture yourself strolling across his fields. Tender shoots nibbled the stubs, rabbit burrows dotting the ground, peasants muttering about ruined harvests. And somewhere, behind castle walls, the lord of the land sits uneasily, pretending that rabbits do not exist. For him, the fight against rabbits was not a rural duty, but a private nightmare he would rather never face. Faced with this problem, our knight didn't simply hide, he tried to invent solutions. And this is where things got peculiar. Instead of hunting the rabbits like everyone else, he came up with elaborate schemes to keep them away, as if rabbits were clever bandits plotting raids. He ordered fences built higher than needed, sometimes double-walled, even though rabbits could still dig underneath. He sprinkled strange herbal mixtures around fields, convinced that pungent scents would repel his furry foes. Peasants whisper that he once even considered ringing small bells on posts, hoping the sound would scare them off. These odd strategies reflected the ingenuity and superstition of the Middle Ages. People then used charms, amulets, and even church blessings to protect crops. Rabbits were stubborn, though. They ignored charms as easily as they ignored his authority. Scholars still debate whether his methods were recorded to mock him, or whether they really were part of the agricultural experiments of the time. After all, medieval lords often mixed practical farming with folklore remedies. Imagine walking through his estate. Along the hedgerows, you see bundles of rosemary tied with twine, garlic bulbs hanging like ornaments, and fences patched 3 times over. It's both absurd and oddly endearing. The knight might stride about, arms crossed, inspecting his anti-rabbit fortifications, while the peasants exchange glances, fighting back laughter. In the end, his fear led him to spend more energy designing defenses against rabbits than against rival barons. And while others saw rabbits as stew or sport, For him, they became a symbol of vigilance, a reminder that even the smallest creature could undo a man's composure. Now let's zoom out from his estate and step into the broader medieval imagination. Rabbits weren't just animals in fields. They hopped right into the pages of manuscripts and stained glass windows. You flip open a medieval bestiary, and there, painted in vivid colors, is the rabbit, sometimes timid, sometimes strangely fierce, and often standing for qualities that seemed contradictory. In Christian symbolism, rabbits could mean innocence and purity, yet also uncontrolled desire. That duality must have made life confusing for a knight who trembled at the real thing. One particularly odd tradition in illuminated manuscripts was the killer rabbit motif, marginalia from the 13th and 14th. Centuries sometimes showed rabbits armed with swords or hunting humans, a bizarre reversal of roles. Scholars still debate why monks doodled these scenes. Some say it was satire, poking fun at human fear. Others suggest it was a moral allegory, reminding readers that even the weak can triumph over the strong. For our knight's legend, these images almost feel prophetic. Imagine yourself peering at those manuscripts by candlelight. The ink smells faint, the gold leaf glimmers, and in the margins, tiny rabbits charge knights with lances. You chuckle, but then recall our knight's nervous glance at real rabbits in fields. Did he ever see such artwork? Did he feel mocked by it, or secretly validated? No one knows. The point is, in medieval culture, rabbits were never just rabbits. They were metaphors, jokes, symbols, and sometimes warnings. And while most people enjoyed the humor, Sir Rolandus lived the punchline, carrying the burden of fear in a world where rabbits were everywhere, even in books meant for prayer. Step inside the echoing stone halls of a medieval court. The air smells faintly of wax and roasted meat, and courtiers shuffle in long robes while jesters hover, waiting for gossip to drop like coins into their hats. Here, whispers travel faster than arrows. And soon enough, the knight's strange weakness became everyone's favorite tale. At first, it was only among squires and servants, a private joke when a rabbit darted across the courtyard. But gossip climbs ladders quickly. By the time Sir Rolandus dined with nobles, the stories had already reached the high table. A chuckle here, a sly grin there, and sometimes even a whispered toast to the bravest knight unless a rabbit comes by. For a man who built his honor on courage, the mockery stung. Medieval courts thrived on humor that cut both ways. Jesters in particular were licensed to say the unsayable, and you can almost hear one capering before the fire, mimicking long ears, twitching his nose, while the courtiers laugh. Was it cruel? Perhaps. Yet such performances were part of courtly life. Historians still debate whether this ridicule was exaggerated in later chronicles, or if it truly marked him in his own lifetime. Picture yourself seated at the long oak table. Golden cups gleam in the candlelight, roasted boar steams on platters, and amid the noise of minstrels playing, a jester hops about with imaginary ears. The laughter is warm, but it leaves the night cold. Rabbits had followed him from fields to feasts, from battle to banquet. No armor could shield him from becoming the court's running joke. In the Middle Ages, fear was often explained not by doctors but by priests. So, naturally, the knight's unease with rabbits soon attracted the attention of local clerics. In hushed chapels with flickering candles, monks debated what rabbits might mean in the eyes of God. Some cited scripture, noting rabbits were unclean in Leviticus, creatures that chewed the cud but did not have cloven hoofs. Others, however, saw them as symbols of innocence, even linking them to the Virgin Mary in later iconography. Imagine the confusion. Are rabbits sinful pests or holy emblems? No wonder interpretations varied. For Sir Rolandus, these debates offered little comfort. A friar once told him that fear of rabbits was not shameful, but a sign of humility. If the proud knight could tremble before a small creature, it showed he recognized his weakness before God. Did Rolandus believe it? Hard to say. Historians still argue whether clerics truly supported him, or if such comments were pious attempts to soften ridicule. You can almost see him kneeling on cold stone, whispering prayers, hoping his strange dread might be lifted. Meanwhile, the stained glass windows above show rabbits tucked at the feet of saints, painted in vibrant red and blue. Was it reassurance or torment to see his enemy immortalized in sacred art? In this world, theology wrapped around everything, even a knight's phobia. And so, rabbits became not only an earthly nuisance but a spiritual puzzle, woven into sermons, confessions, and the endless tug of war between fear and faith. Beyond prayers and theology, everyday life still pressed on. And in noble culture, hunting was more than pastime. It was training, prestige, and entertainment rolled together. Fox hunts, boar hunts, and of course, rabbit hunts. Picture a sunny morning. Nobles in bright tunics mount their horses, hounds straining at leashes, horns sounding across the fields. It was almost mandatory for a knight to join such events, to prove his skill and share in the camaraderie. For Sir Rolandus, however, prospect was pure dread. When the dogs flushed rabbits from their burrows, shouts of excitement filled the air. Men cheered, arrows loosed, and the animals darted like streaks of light. Everyone except Rolandus. He stayed stiff, pale, clutching his reins as though the ground itself might betray him. His refusal to participate became obvious. Jesters joked that he had the only hounds in Europe trained to chase butterflies instead. Was it fair? Probably not. But humor, once attached to his fear, clung tighter than a bird to wool. Hunting manuals from the 14th century describe rabbit hunts in detail. Nets, ferrets, and even smoke used to dry them out. Historians still debate whether Rolandus ever tried these methods, or if he always avoided them. Records are murky. Some suggest he faked illness, others that he found excuses to hunt larger game. But one thing was certain. He never overcame the association of rabbits with humiliation. Imagine yourself riding beside him, horns echoing, dogs barking, as a rabbit dashes across the field. To others, it's sport. To him, it's torment. And so he lingers at the edge of the hunt, trapped between duty and dread, a knight who could slay foes but not chase a hare. Strange tales often grow in villages faster than crops in spring. As the knight's fear spread from the estate to the court, it also sank into local folklore. Around hearths and in taverns, people whispered that rabbits were not just animals but witches in disguise. It wasn't an uncommon belief. Medieval superstition often gave small creatures supernatural roles. Cats, hares, even toads could be accused of harboring dark spirits. So when word spread that Sir Rolandus trembled before rabbits, peasants nodded knowingly. Of course he does. The rabbits are bewitched. One tale describes a woman accused of shape-shifting into a hare to spy on fields at night. Another says rabbits could carry messages for demons, slipping silently between villages. Whether people truly believe this or just enjoyed the story is hard to tell. Historians still debate how much these rabbit witch tales were satire aimed at noble fears, or sincere superstitions woven into rural life. Picture yourself by a smoky tavern fire, ale in hand, listening to farmers spin stories. A night afraid of rabbits? Oh, but perhaps they're not rabbits at all. Perhaps they're cursed messengers. The laughter is half amusement, half genuine unease. For Rolandus, this meant his fear wasn't only mocked. It was folded into a larger tapestry of medieval imagination. where rabbits danced on the edge of the natural and the supernatural. So his terror, once personal, became public legend. A single trembling glance at a field hare transformed into whispers of witches' curses. And the uncanny. In a world where superstition thrived, rabbits became far more than furry nuisances. They became ominous shadows of a mystery nobody fully solved.